All right, so you ready to put on like the metaphorical judge's
I
robes?
think I am, yeah.
Because today we're doing a deep dive that's taking us into the world of the judiciary. We're going to go like beyond the whole, gavel and the Law and Order
Yeah.
drama to figure out like what does this career really mean? And you've brought us some really cool source material for this one, including some insights from this career platform called RoleCatcher.
Sounds intriguing.
And get this, that's saying that it's actually getting tougher to land a judgeship. AI is changing things up. But we'll come back to that later. First, let's figure out what judges actually do. It's got to be more than just, sentencing people and ruling on objections, right?
Yeah, you're right. The sources that we have definitely paint a much bigger picture. For example, did you know that judges handle a whole range of cases that go way beyond criminal court? We're talking family disputes, small claims, even cases that involve juveniles. So yeah, it's a pretty diverse docket.
Wow, so forget Law and Order. This is like Law and Life, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like fairness and being impartial are really key here, not just like
Right.
memorizing a law book.
Yeah, absolutely. The sources really emphasize that judges need to be incredible listeners. Like, they need to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard. And on top of that, they're also responsible for guiding juries, like making sense of all these complex legal arguments that come up. Oh, and staying up to date on laws that are constantly changing.
Wow.
It's a lot.
So yeah, no resting on your legal laurels in this job.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's talk about something that I think everybody wants to know about any job. Work-life balance. One source mentions long and irregular hours.
Hmm.
Is that like lawyers speak for always being on call?
Pretty much, yeah. Being a judge often does mean having a really demanding schedule. Things like evening hearings and weekend work, being ready to go if there's an emergency, it's all part of the job.
Wow.
But there is kind of a trade-off. The same source that mentions those long hours also points out that job security is a huge perk.
Right.
Because judges are in such high demand, the career path for judges tends to be pretty stable.
So you might be working all the time, but you'll have a job, which is more than some people can say.
That's true.
Okay, but say someone's okay with those long hours. What does it take to actually be a judge?
Right.
Because our source, RoleCatcher, gets very specific about what skills you need. And active listening is huge. They rate it at 84% importance.
Wow. Well, yeah, when you think about it, it makes sense. A judge has to really take in every single thing, right? Every detail, every word of like testimony, every single legal argument. So active listening, it's not just about being polite. It's about making sure that justice is served. And you can only really do that if you have a complete understanding of the case in front of you.
That makes sense. So active listening is crucial. What else is in RoleCatcher's, like, Judge Skill Starter Pack? What else do you need to make it into the courtroom?
So right alongside active listening, you've got critical thinking and complex problem solving. Judges are always facing these intricate legal puzzles. They have to weigh evidence, apply legal precedents, which are basically past rulings that they use as guidelines. And then they also have to consider all the little unique circumstances of every single case.
Like being a legal detective, in a way.
Yeah, kind of.
You're searching for the truth.
Yeah.
And you're using logic to navigate this maze of laws and precedents. It sounds pretty intense. And speaking of things that I find fascinating, RoleCatcher also mentions that it's really important for judges to have strong writing skills. Now, I don't picture judges being novelists or anything, but I'm guessing they have to write a lot.
Yeah, you're right. It's not exactly, writing a bestseller, but legal writing, that's a core part of this job because judges have to produce these well-reasoned, like legal opinions that explain their rulings.
Oh, okay.
And these documents, they need to be crystal clear, logically airtight, basically, and they have to be able to like stand up to scrutiny from, appeals courts, which are the higher courts that review decisions.
So it's not enough to just make a ruling. You have to explain all your reasoning in a way that's clear, concise, and legally sound. It's like you're building a body of legal thought, like case by case. That's a lot of pressure. You know what else is interesting? It seems like you need more than just a black and white understanding of the law to be a judge. Because RoleCatcher even lists psychology as being a really valuable thing to know about for this job. So it's not just about the law. It's about, like, understanding people, too.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating to me. When you look at all the skills that RoleCatcher is highlighting here, you've got active listening, you've got critical thinking, you've even got psychology. It paints this picture of a judge as someone who's not just like legally astute, but also someone who's deeply empathetic and insightful about like human behavior.
Yeah, it's almost like you're a detective of human nature, trying to understand the why behind people's actions and stuff. That adds like a whole other layer of complexity to things. Speaking of layers, let's talk about the perks of the job. And I don't just mean the robe.
Of course. Because while that gavel might be heavy, there are definitely some upsides.
Our sources mention this high earning potential thing.
So amazing.
Like, that was nice. What kind of numbers are we talking about for like these guardians of justice?
Well, it really varies. It depends on things like the level of court, the location, experience. But in general, judges are among the highest paid legal professionals. And RoleCatcher actually gives some salary ranges. And it's safe to say that financial security is definitely a factor for a lot of people who pursue this kind of career path.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about how judges get paid pretty well, but I feel like the rewards go way beyond just the paycheck, right?
Oh, for sure.
The source mentions something called intellectual stimulation. And I bet that's a big one for judges because, it's got to be pretty engaging to be dealing with these complex legal issues day in and day out.
Yeah, you're right on the money. A lot of judges would actually say that the constant intellectual stimulation is like one of the most rewarding things about the job because, the law is always changing. There are always new cases and new interpretations and even new laws being made all the time. So it's kind of like this puzzle that's always shifting.
So it's not like you're just applying the same rules over and over again. You're like contributing to the evolution of the law itself.
Exactly. Every single case kind of brings a new challenge,
Yeah.
like a new opportunity to really look at legal precedent, interpret those statutes, and shape how the law is actually applied. Plus, on top of that, you're dealing with real people.
Right.
Real lives, and your decisions like directly affect them and their outcomes. So that sense of responsibility that you have, that responsibility of making sure that there's justice and fairness, that's like a really powerful motivator for people.
It's like you said, law and life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, legal concepts in the abstract. It's about how those concepts actually play out in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the real world, remember how we talked about AI kind of shaking things up?
Oh, yeah.
RoleCatcher mentioned that more and more employers are like using AI to screen applicants. And I got to admit, that is a little intimidating.
Yeah.
What does that even mean for aspiring judges? Are we going to have robot judges in the future or something?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Well, AI is definitely finding its way into the legal field. I don't think we're going to see robot judges replacing human judgment anytime soon.
Okay, that's good.
What RoleCatcher is talking about here is how AI is being used in those like early stages of looking at applicants. So instead of having humans like poring over these giant stacks of resumes, they're using AI algorithms to do it. And they analyze them for like specific things, keywords and skills and experience.
So it's like having this super efficient but slightly intimidating assistant
Right.
who like decides if you even make it to the interview round.
Exactly.
That's kind of intense. Any advice from RoleCatcher on like how to stand out in this crazy world of robot recruiters?
Well, the biggest thing is that it's more important than ever to really tailor your application because these algorithms, they're made to look for really specific information. You got to make sure that your application is like speaking their language,
So instead of just listing every single internship and like moot court experience you've had, you really have to focus on those skills that RoleCatcher was talking about, like active listening and all that. So it's like you're trying to like appeal to the robot overlords or something.
Think of it less like appealing to overlords and more like, you just want to make sure that your application's speaking the same language as the technology that's scanning it. So instead of just saying something like, I'm a great communicator, you need to show it. For example, you could say, successfully mediated, a complex contract dispute between multiple parties, and it resulted in a settlement that everyone was happy with.
Oh, I see what you mean. One of them sounds like it's from a graduation speech, and the other one's actually like a story that proves that you can, back up what you're saying.
Exactly.
It's all about showing, not just telling, which is probably good advice for any job application.
Right.
Okay, so let's say you've impressed the AI.
Yeah.
And you wowed the humans, and you actually got the job. So you're officially a judge. Congrats. Is it smooth sailing from there, or are there like continuous hurdles that you have to deal with? Like, how do you keep up with the laws that are constantly changing? Do judges get sent back to law school every couple of years or something?
No, there aren't any mandatory law school reunions.
Okay.
But you're right. Becoming a judge, it's not like you're crossing some kind of finish line. It's way more like the starting line of a lifelong marathon. Like the learning really never stops. As we talked about before, the legal landscape is always changing. New laws get passed. There are new precedents being set. And even like societal values, right? Those can even change how laws get applied.
It's true.
So even when you've reached what a lot of people would say is like the top of the legal profession, you still have to stay on top of your game. You always have to keep learning and adapting to all those changes.
It sounds like a lot of pressure. How do they do it?
Well, it is a very demanding job. There's no doubt about that. But it's also really, really rewarding. Because remember, you're in this unique position where you actually have the opportunity to shape how laws are understood. You can influence legal precedents. And you even get to contribute to how the justice system itself evolves. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's one that a lot of judges find extremely fulfilling.
Wow. So it's like you're almost like a gardener, right? Like you're tending to the legal system, making sure it's bearing fruit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm mixing my metaphors there, but you get what I mean.
I get it.
But, okay, seriously, how do judges stay on top of all of that change? Are there like mandatory book clubs or something?
Not quite a book club, haha. But yeah, continuous learning is just like built into this job. RoleCatcher mentions a few different ways that judges can stay up to date, like going to conferences, joining professional associations, even just reading legal journals. It's really all about making sure that you're staying in the loop. And a lot of judges would actually say that some of their best learning happens outside the courtroom, by being involved in their communities and understanding the social context of the cases that they're presiding over.
So it's way more than just like memorizing new laws then.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding how they affect real people in the real world, which is always changing. It's a lot, but it's really interesting stuff. I have to say, I always picture judges as being these kind of like mythical figures, But this deep dive has really shown me the human side of it. So if you had to pick one big takeaway that you want our listener to walk away with today, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think if there's one thing that all of our sources have made super clear, it's that becoming a judge, it's not just about like reaching the bench. It's more about like committing to this lifelong pursuit of justice and really trying to understand things. It's about constantly working on your skills, challenging your own biases, and never forgetting about how your decisions affect real people.
Yeah, it's not just a job. It's like a calling. I love that a pursuit of justice and understanding. That's something worth thinking about. Well, on that note, we'll leave everyone to ponder that. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of judges.
Thanks for having me.